Okay, so for the first assignment, if you go into our Scholar page and you find assignment instructions, it will pull up a whole bunch of stuff. I have a habit of putting the instructions for all of the assignments I use in one class all in the same document. So the first thing that is going to be due for this class, but it's not the first thing listed, is this one. Secondary data analysis through ICPSR, data procurement and assessment, so assignment A. I just had this weird idiosyncrasy where I grouped the assignments together based on overarching projects. The two overarching projects in the class are the secondary data analysis project, and this is the first of two parts. And then there's other assignments that fall into the mixed methods project. So that's just kind of like the way that I've been thinking about this. But ultimately, these all break up into individual assignments. So here are the instructions right here. We are going to use ICPSR, which is in this link right here. I'll go ahead and start that process and like occasionally make reference back to the instructions, but I'm going to be kind of just going off the top of my head from this point forward. So ICPSR is the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research. So this is the largest single repository of academic data, like period, or at least in the United States as far as I know. This is run by the University of Michigan. And yeah, to start up, I would go ahead and log in with your CNU ID. We as CNU captains have special access because we are ICPSR members, or a member institution, and I am the official ICPSR representative for CNU. And to do that, just go ahead and click sign in, and then click sign in via Google and sign in via your CNU account's Google account. That's the easiest way to get logged in. Once you're logged in, I mean, that has a couple of benefits. It allows you to change some preferences, and you can edit like your profile and dashboard. But more importantly, it does give you access to the complete library of its data. Most data on ICPSR is publicly available to anybody for free. You could certainly do this assignment, or, I mean, in all honesty, you could make an entire academic publishing career off ICPSR publicly available data. But since we are an institutional member of ICPSR, we do get some extra special stuff, and there is some stuff that's restricted specifically to ICPSR members. So what I am going to want you to do is just simply find a data set that is relevant to one of your interests. I'm going to have you do some really basic data analysis on just whatever sort of data set that you find. The important parts in the assignment is that you understand the details about the data set that you find, you know where to find those details, and you know how to do the skills that we went over the other day that have to do with recoding in SPSS. Specifically collapsing variables and making dummy variables. I don't think I specifically showed you how to collapse variables, but I mean, it's a basic recoding process, and I'll show you how to do it. It's pretty easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with just like something simple, like I'm gonna search drug use. Now, when you search, you're gonna wanna click some options. First, go to public use. So what it means by public use is not necessarily restricted to or unrestricted to non-ICPSR institutions. What they mean by public use is that it's not restricted use, meaning that there's not data safety protocols that you have to go through. Any restricted use data set is going to involve you having to go through a process of like submitting to the relevant organization like what your intentions are for the data, Oftentimes confirming you have a secure site where you can store the data and it's not at risk of being leaked somehow. That is an arduous process that can take months. So generally speaking, just stick to public use data sets. So make sure the restriction type is specifically got public use clicked. Next, go to data format and just click SPSS. Because it's the case that we're using SPSS in this class, you'll use SPSS for your assignment. And just generally speaking, SPSS is probably one of the more common formats for data on ICPSR. So yeah, with all that set up, I'm going to use this survey as my example. The National Survey on Drug Use and Health. So if you click, it takes you to the main page for the specific data set. And to go back to our instructions here real quick. Once you have your data set open, what you're going to end up doing is answering just in straight up paragraph form or sentences or bullet points, whatever you are most comfortable with. I forgot I have to stay close to the laptop. These questions. This comes from from an article that was published some time ago that specifically outlines for students how to do a code book critique. And we talked about code books the other day. The code book is fundamentally where all the basic information about your data set is. Its coding scheme, the specific questions from the questionnaire that it was derived from, how it was collected, who collected it, where it was collected. And so you'll answer for your assignment all of these questions. So all of these should be accounted for. And a lot of them can probably be accounted for just on the main page of your data set, whatever you choose. Some of them have really thorough summaries, and that is the case here. I can tell you that a good amount of those questions for this data set could be answered probably just with this summary. But what I want you to do is I want you to download your data set in SPSS, and that should come with a code book. So I'm going to start that download. I know that this data set does come with a code book that comes coupled in with its actual data set, but you can also go to data and documentation in most cases and specifically get their documentation and code book. The code book is going to be kind of the one-stop shop for all the information that you need. Remember, code books kind of vary in terms of their quality. So one of the things that I'll point out is that because a lot of the data here just comes from the general public or like other researchers, some have really good code books. Some have really terrible code books. And so if you come across data that doesn't have enough information in its code book or its initial listing to give you the ability to answer those questions, then you should definitely just move on to another data set. So once you have your download downloaded, it's going to show up in a zip file. A zip file is just a compressed file that makes things a little bit more wieldy to download. And if you double click it on a Mac, it just produces a folder out of that zip file. On PC, you just have to click the zip file and you may have to extract the files within and just tell it where you want those files extracted. But that's pretty easy. So for this data set, they've got some files here, terms of use. This looks like the manifest. There's legalese type stuff. Most of what we would need is in this folder DS0001. And so I got a couple things here. The two things that we would need are here. So here's the data set, and just above that is the code book. So in the code book, you're going to be able to find right at the very top, obviously, the title of the study. This is the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. from the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Office of Applied Studies. And so some have table of contents, some do not. This does, and so this has every individual variable. The introduction tells you about the organization that collected it. You can find their survey methodology, which is important, who is in the data set, what time period the data set covers. Like I said, if you find a thorough code book, you'll be able to answer all the questions you need for this assignment in the code book. So let's go ahead and open the data set. I have a couple of variables of note I wanted to work with. Ignore that warning. And just dive right in. So here is the data set. I am somewhat familiar with this data set. This has variables primarily on drug use, but most drug and addiction-oriented data sets also have mental health or general health variables as well, and that is the case here. So there's a lot of different things here. This is pretty well curated. If you look at the values, you see like all their codes are labeled. Their labels are pretty descriptive of what the variables are. You can probably figure out what the vast majority of the variables are just by looking at the labels, but some have longer labels that need a little bit more explaining or description. In that case, you should just go to the code book. So the two skills that I'm going to want you to be able to engage with for the assignment is collapsing categorical variables, or collapsing categories within categorical variables, and creating dummy variables. So let's get started with that. As always, to start recoding variables, always go to recode into different variables, so I make something new and I don't override the original variable. So I know that I am specifically looking for a variable called CRK MFU. So I'm going to right click. So I probably pointed this out before, but when you're at a variable listing menu like this, you can right click on PC. If you hold down Control and right click on a MacBook, it comes up. You can switch between variable names and labels. So since I know exactly what I'm looking for, I'm just going to switch to the names and start typing what I'm looking for. CRK. There we go. So you can also hold down Control, right click, and go to variable information and see what this variable is all about. So this variable is specifically among users of crack cocaine. What month of the year did they first use crack cocaine? I do not know a whole lot about specifically crack cocaine or its patterns of consumption, but I do know that like there are some things that are that are seasonal. Strangely enough, when it comes to things that are criminalized, like violent crime goes up pretty substantially during the summer months. Property crime goes up pretty substantially during the summer months. A lot of different forms of crime tend to be seasonal. I sincerely do not know if that is the case for people trying potentially addictive drugs. I mean, that falls under the banner of crime and criminology as well. It's a little bit of a different sort of thing. Like one is a crime against a observable victim. The other is, just making poor decisions with one's own health. But yeah, I really am a little bit curious to see if there's any seasonality to this. So this gives us a really easy coding scheme. So it's just the number that the months are in on the calendar. So 1's January up through 12 of December. We have a lot of, because this is just an idiosyncrasy of this data set, we have a lot of codes for people who either don't remember or never used crack or skipped the question. I don't know what bad data meant in this context, but that's not usable. Refused, blank, no answer. So these are all their missing codes. So I'm just going to continue to treat those codes as missing. The only valid codes that I really need are 1 through 12. So I'm going to split this up, or I'm going to collapse these down from the 12 individual months into seasons based on my subjective assessment of when seasons begin. So I'm going to call this crack season. And then season when first used crack. All right. So this should be pretty simple. So I know that my old value is 1 for January. I'm going to keep that at 1. I'm going to use 1 also as my code for winter. So 1 stays 1. 2 becomes 1. So February is winter. And then actually I consider December to be the beginning of winter. So that said, winter in my mind is December, January, and February. Obviously, there's climatological definitions. There's astronomical definitions. This is my personal definition. And if it's Christmas season, it's winter. So, like, there we go. I am going to say that spring, which I'm going to 2 code. Spring begins in March because March is when my birthday is, and if it's my birthday, I officially consider it to be springtime. So 3 becomes a 2 code. 4, April is definitely like the epitome of spring. And then 5 is, in my mind, the last month of spring, especially here in Virginia, because it doesn't start to get abusively hot until June. So June, though, is my definition of summer, which I'm going to 3 code. Because my definition of summer is approximately when it starts feeling like Florida in Hampton Roads, like it's summer. In June is when that happens in my mind. So July, definitely summer. August, like the worst part of summer. That's a 3 code. And then last we just have to count for fall. September, school's like definitely back in session, so fall for real. October is like the quintessential fall month. And then November, the final month of fall. Boom. And then I know that all of those missing codes that they used, those, I think they started at like 85, but I'm just going to cover my bases, and I'm going to say anything that ranges from 13 to 100, that's missing. Only valid. Sorry, I just got an error. What was that? Range 13 through, say 99. There we go. Add. There we go. Okay, cool. All right, so I just have to press OK. And then, as always, whenever we create a new variable, it's always going to be at the very, very, very bottom. This is a massive government data set, so there's hundreds of variables. Ours is at the very bottom, so I don't need those decimals. I just have a categorical variable. I'm going to give value labels. It's pretty simple. 1, winter. 2, spring. 3, summer. 4, fall. Press OK. I should be good from this point forward. So yeah, that's it. Let's take a look at what we got. I know the assignment asks you to do frequency distributions both for your original variable and for your newly created variables. At very least, I do the newly created variable here, make sure everything makes sense. And also, I believe it asks for the appropriate chart. I actually think bar chart here would be good. Most of the time when you're doing a frequency distribution, like you can probably get away with either bar or pie chart. I actually think bar chart's gonna serve us a little better here because I wanna see if there is certain seasons that are more likely than others to be the first season in which somebody indulged in crack cocaine. So let's go ahead and run it, running the frequencies. All right. That is interesting. Summer and spring are higher than winter and fall. Winter is way low compared to all the other seasons. Summer and spring are like, if they're not right at the same level with, actually, yeah, they're both 51. So they're both 51. Really the anomaly here is winter for some reason. I'm just going to assume as a sociologist that like that's probably because of the same reason that winter has relatively low crime compared to the rest of the year, is just in northern places especially, there's less social interaction. People don't want to go outside because it's cold. So yeah, that is that. So the next skill that I want to show you is dummy coding. So I am going to use one of the mental health variables in this case. Let's go once again into recode into different values. So SPSS always leaves your work from your previous recoding. Reason is in case you screw something up, it wants to give you the ability to go back and see what you did. So pull that back over, get rid of what you did do, and then enter, and then I'm going to enter GAD, nope, GADOR, here we go. This asks people in the data set, how much do you worry about everyday problems? And the label here doesn't quite do this variable justice because if you're going to into the code book, you'll find that it's asking, how much do you worry about everyday problems relative to other people? And so this is like, relative to other people, do you think that you worry about everyday problems more, the same, or less? And so what we're gonna do with this is, if you remember, dummy variables are just simply binary variables that are coded 1 or 0, meaning that 1 means the presence of a given condition, 0 means the absence of it. And the 3 conditions we're gonna break out are the respondent worries more than the typical person, the respondent worries about the same, or the respondent worries less. So I'm going to start with worry more is going to be my first dummy. R worries more. Old and new values. This is a little bit of a pain, but you got to get rid of all your old recodings, especially when you did a bunch of them. It is annoying. There may be a way to highlight them all at once, but I haven't figured it out on a Mac. So I Actually, I'm going to check one more time. Let's check our coding. Worry more. If you right click on it. Okay, so one code is the person worries more. 2 code is about the same. 3 code is less. Okay, so worry more is our first. That's our 1 code. So, oh man, it's going to make me do this again. My apologies. That's okay, because I am actually going to... Actually, no, I'll have to redo that as well. Okay, so 1 code remains 1 code. But in this case, 2 code for the same becomes a 0 code. And then 3 code for worries less, that's a 0 code. And then I'm going to say all other values that I don't specify, make them missing. All right, our first should be created. Now, to create the other 2, so I'm going to call this one worry same. Our worries the same as others. So in this case, the fact that our work is left behind is actually a little bit convenient because all I'm doing is changing the 1 code to a 0 and the 2 code to a 1. Okay, and then one last one to do. This was worry less. Our worries less than others. And then our 2 code once again becomes 0. Our 3 code becomes 1. All right, we got our 3 new variables. I'm going to go ahead and put some value labels on it. So worry more, 1. R worries more than others. 0 code. R does not worry more. And when you're actually, if you are actually doing the assignment, I will say, put a little more thought into your labels than the ad hoc labels that I'm making right now off the top of my head. So R worries the same as others. 0 R does not worry the same as others. And then the last one, R worries less than others. R does not worry less than others. Okay, so I'm going to take away the decimals for all of them because I really don't need them. Yeah, that's all nominal. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing that we did, but I'm going to do it with all 3 of our new dummy variables. You can actually run as many frequencies at the same time as you want, so I'm just going to pull them all over at once. You get all of your frequency tables grouped together, and you get all of the bar charts grouped together. And so yeah, we now have, from what was one single variable, we've broken those out into 3 different variables. It looks like this group of people is actually worries more than that. Actually seems like relatively chill. Relatively small portion of people worry more than others. I did not look at the specifics of this data set, so I don't know who exactly their population is. So, I mean, that's what the code book is for. I pulled this up kind of off the top of my head, or just kind of on impulse. But it does seem like maybe there's something unique about this population. I know that of the population, at least some of them are drug users, because, I mean, there's all those variables in the data set, but I'm not sure what the other defining features of the population are. But it does seem like these people are relatively, I guess, on par with the general public, or at least they perceive themselves to be on par with the general public in terms of how much they worry. So yeah, that is the gist of the assignment. Yeah, just be sure to submit everything as a single Google Doc. Copy paste your syntax, all of your output, including your graphics, and your frequency distributions for both your original and your recoded variables. And with that said, I'm going to stop the recording and answer any questions.